Thanks for joining me today and welcome to session 5 of Innovator Island, where we're building a serverless web application for a theme park. So my name is James Bezic and I'm a developer advocate here in the AWS Serverless team. Before I was a DA, I was a product manager for a long time, and I was also a software developer for quite a few years as well. The most important thing on this slide is my Twitter handle and my email address. So if you have any questions at all from following through these workshops, or you have any general questions about serverless, please feel free to reach out to me and I'll do my very best to help you. So today is the final session of 5. Let's do a quick look at what we did before. So in session 1, we set up Cloud9 and we deployed the backend application, and then we deployed a front end with Amplify Console to a public URL. In session 2, we configured real-time messaging for our application. In session 3, we added photo compositing and chroma key using a backend workflow. Then in session 4, we had a look at business analytics and statistics from park visitors using QuickSight and Kinesis. And today we're looking at event-based architectures. So the goal of these sessions is to use a range of different AWS services to build a real-time web application. Now all of the code is provided for you. You don't need to do any coding at all to solve the challenges. And if you have any questions as you go through the workshop, feel free to let me know. So in event-based architecture, we'll be configuring Amazon EventBridge and understanding a little bit more about event buses. We'll be identifying and routing events in the application. Some of the events are already in place. And then we'll be using CloudWatch metrics to build monitoring tools to help us have a sense of what's happening within the theme park. We'll be using a couple of new tools and services in this session. I'll be introducing Amazon EventBridge, which is a serverless event bus, and we'll be looking at CloudWatch metrics in some detail. Most of this video will be going through the workshop and doing the coding to be able to implement anything we need to make these work. So before we get started, just a couple of prerequisites. So you need an AWS account. If you don't have one, you can sign up for one at aws.amazon.com. Please make sure you're using one of the supported regions of the park. You should have set that in module 1, and hopefully make sure you keep using the same module or the same region throughout all the different modules in this workshop, otherwise you'll get some strange results. In terms of cost, this workshop is completely free for you to watch the videos and follow along, but there may be some small charges incurred as you use different services, because we are using a couple of things now that are outside of the free tier. To take part in today's activities, you will need a desktop or a laptop computer, not a tablet, and please use Chrome or Firefox browsers since we've tested everything for browser compatibility, for optimal compatibility. We'll be using a range of different serverless AWS services to build this serverless application. So if you have some familiarity with the AWS Management Console, that's helpful, but it's not essential. And everything I'm doing today builds on from previous modules. So if you're coming at this fresh, starting at module 5, you'll probably have a better understanding of what's going on if you start with the first module and continue on from there. So this is the final part, and so today we're going to be looking at helping the park operations team in the theme park. They need to get notifications when there are issues on the rides. So the rides report various errors and outages when things occur, and some of these are informational, but others are emergencies. So here we're going to use EventBridge to filter events that are being emitted from ride systems to route those events accordingly. So here are some of the AWS services that we're going to be using today. Cloud9 we've been using throughout this whole series, and that's the IDE in a browser, so you can use an EC2 instance-based IDE to download code, use a terminal, and do all those sorts of things. It gives us all a uniform experience as we're going through the workshop. We've been using Lambda throughout. That is our serverless compute on demand service. And then we're now introducing SNS. So SNS is a really useful notification system that's serverless, and we used it already for ride times earlier, connecting the ride systems to our front end in module 2. Now we're going to be using it for sending SMS messages and emails. CloudWatch is a central place in AWS for managing metrics. And so the AWS services actually create many free metrics you can use, but you can also publish your own metrics for things like theme park ride outages. So that's what we'll be doing today. And it comes complete with dashboard capability, so you'll see a little bit of that too. EventBridge is a serverless event bus service, and it's a really useful service for decoupling producers and consumers of events. Now that might not mean much to you now, but as we start to get into the workshop, it'll make a bit more sense. It's a really useful service for developing extensibility in your services and opening up events in your application to other services or teams within your company, so other people can develop new services based upon events that you produce. So what are we building today? So this is the first part. Well, when ride times and outages are published to an SNS topic, that currently powers the real-time data in the app for park guests. But park maintenance has no visibility into either the wait times or the outages. So this is an oversight. When this app was built, currently the app supports park guests, but it doesn't help park maintenance. So how can we build new functionality easily without changing this existing code? Well, in this section, we'll first publish the ride wait times and the outage messages to EventBridge. Now, the ride wait time message is actually just simply JSON, and it looks like this. You might remember this from seeing it in the console when we looked in the browser. We're going to create a new Lambda function that's invoked by this SNS topic. And it'll then put this message onto the default event bus in EventBridge. Now that, when we do this, is also just JSON, this event that we'll be creating. But it has an event envelope that contains some descriptive information beyond just the ride information that we had from the SNS message. And so then we'll create a JSON stringified body to create a detail attribute. And so that's essentially how you create an event and put it into an EventBridge event bus. Now next, once you put an event onto a bus, you then create a rule to then filter for those events. So the rule itself uses JSON to match against events. So we can look for a source of theme park rides with a detail type depending on what particular field that we're looking for. So in this case, a metrics lambda function that publishes to CloudWatch metrics. And then we can build a dashboard in CloudWatch metrics to visualize that data for the park operations team. So the message data in the flow and traffic controller by itself isn't very useful. It only shows the wait times and this binary in-service or out-of-service status. So the park operations team needs richer information to know if an outage is serious or if it's just informational. So fortunately, we have another service that interrogates the ride system to find out more, and we'll be using this service to enrich the event. So first we create a rule to capture outage events using the rules in EventBridge. So remember, a rule is just JSON. So this rule looks for events when the in-service value is set to false. We then set up a Lambda function as a target for this rule. And then this Lambda function finds out more about this particular outage and enriches this event. So this creates three types of event. You have an informational event, such as removing a ride vehicle, it's just something simple happening, or a warning, maybe a passenger on the ride is sick, or an emergency, maybe you're having to evacuate riders on a ride. So three different types of event will be discovered by enriching the event. Now the Lambda function creates this new enriched event and then puts it back onto the event bus. So now we can create new event consumers based upon the severity of the event. And these new consumers use those enriched events. So park management wants an email for informational alerts, and we can create a new rule for informational alerts. And this will trigger an SNS topic to send an email. For emergencies, park operations needs a text message, and so we'll create a second rule for these kinds of emergencies. And we'll set the rule target as a second SNS topic, and that'll be capable of sending SMS text messages. Okay, so that's a brief preview of what we're going to be doing next. So go to s12d.com/island workshop and we'll get started. Okay, so to get started, I'm going to do the same thing I've been doing throughout the whole series, where I have the instructions on the left and then the work I'm doing on the right, so you can see how the instructions equate to the steps you need to take. Now, the instructions themselves you'll find from that link before S12D Island Workshop. That takes you to this page, and today in this session we're looking at event-based architecture, so that's number 6 if you just select that option there. On the right hand side, let's log into the AWS Management Console. I'm already logged in, but just step into any page you like. Now, you might already have your Cloud9 instance already available from previous sessions. If not, just go to Cloud9, select the option there, and you'll see the theme park development Cloud9 instance that we had set up from previous sessions. So just click on Open IDE. It takes a couple of minutes to get started, but when it's finished, it will put you back here. These are all the files we downloaded from previous sessions, and there's the terminal, and here's the file editor. So let's take a look at this next module. So this is a really interesting section to me because it talks about event-based architectures, and these are really useful for extending the functionality of existing applications. So what we're going to do here is add new functions that weren't previously designed in the Innovator Island application. So in this situation, we're helping the park's maintenance teams to get alerts from the ride systems. So in this overview, you'll remember from the second session that we created this service called the Flow and Traffic Controller, and that gets the ride wait times and any outages from the rides and publishes it to an SNS topic. So previously we set this up so the web app can then publish that to park guests so they know what the wait times are and if any rides are out of service. But the park's maintenance staff don't know this information, so we need to build a solution today that will help those maintenance people actually get the rides back online. So what we're going to do if we go to how it works. So we've got this SNS topic that already exists, and we're going to build a Lambda function that takes that SNS topic and then pushes it to the messages to EventBridge. And the benefit of doing this, of using EventBridge, is this decoupling capability, where you can decouple the systems that are producing events from those that are consuming events. So if later on you then want to build more systems that are based around any outage information, it'll be much easier because you have an event bus with those events. You don't need to change anything in the systems that are producing those events. So EventBridge uses rules to filter incoming events and then decide where they should be routed. And we're learning a little bit about rules in just a moment. These are really powerful, and it enables you to take very large numbers of events sometimes and then filter them to be very, very specific. So you can only get invoked on specific events that meet criteria. Now, this is a fascinating topic to me, so there's lots of different resources are worth reading about separately from this workshop. This link tells you more about EventBridge, which is our serverless event bus. There's an introduction video that walks through some more examples of how you could use this. And there's also more details about how to integrate EventBridge into serverless applications. So I hope you get the time to look at some of those links after this workshop. This is the serverless backend that we're going to be developing. So just to remind or to refresh what we were talking about, this is the SNS topic. We're building this Lambda function. This will produce events that get put into a default event bus in EventBridge. Then we'll create those rules and then forward the events that meet those rules to targets, which will be different consumers. So first of all, let's set up our environment variables. Now, if you're coming off the other modules straight away, you probably don't need to do this because your terminal will still remember what these are. So if you have done that, if you echo like AWS region and it gives you a value, you don't need to do this. However, if you left a break for some period of time and you're coming back and your Cloud9 instance is restarted, just cut and paste these environment variable setup lines. And after doing that, when I then echo that region, you'll see it now knows we're in US East 1. So just do that, and also make sure that your region is the same as you've been using throughout this entire workshop series. If you change regions, you might get some unexpected results. So there are two subsections to this module. We're going to configure an event bus and a metrics dashboard. And in the second part, we're going to identify and route maintenance events. So let's go to the first section. So in this section, we'll be creating this Lambda function that sends data from the existing SNS topic to EventBridge. And in the second part, we'll then be looking at creating a CloudWatch metrics dashboard. So in this section, these are the services we'll be using. That links to more details about those two services. But let's get on with the step-by-step instructions. So first we're going to Cloud9, which hopefully your Cloud9 instance has now started and it's ready. I'll just clear this down so we can see what we're doing. And we're going to CD into the part 6 directory, which is just here, in this event bus subfolder. There's an application in there we're going to deploy using SAM. So SAM is the serverless application model, and there's a template that we're going to deploy in this directory, template.yaml. And we'll walk through this in just a moment after deploying it. So as before, we're going to package this template, and this bundles together all of the deployed resources and uploads them to our deployment bucket. And then finally, we'll run the deploy command, which tells CloudFormation to deploy this infrastructure. Now while that's deploying, let me tell you what we've got here. So in this template, we have two Lambda functions. And so we've got this Lambda function here that is a publish function, and that's contained in this publish directory. And the handler is in an app.js file, and it's called handler. So if I open that, you'll see the code just here. And what this does, if we just scroll down to, or scroll up to the handler, this is going through that event coming from SNS. And if it's seeing there's a ride summary event, that's the only type of event it's interested in, it'll pass that message, iterate through what's in there, and then put that on the EventBridge bus. This is the part that does this, the put events method. And so this one line is what we use to put this event onto the bus. And an event has an envelope, and it also has a detail. So the detail gets stringified. We're pulling this detail out of the original event, but the envelope stays the same except for the timestamp. So let's close that down. And then the second function is this metrics function just here, and you'll see that the code for that is in the metrics directory, and the code again is in app.js. And this handler here, this is about putting metric data into CloudWatch. So it's using the CloudWatch part of the SDK to build a map of values to push metrics data into CloudWatch. And so that again is just this one-liner that pushes that code up there. Using this node async await syntax makes it fairly straightforward because it can await until the response comes back. So you can do the whole thing in one line of code. So these are fairly short functions. In production apps, you might do something much more elaborate. Okay, so that now has been deployed. So both of those are tiny functions, just 128 megs of RAM. So I'll close this and go back to the instructions. So in step 3, after the SAM deployment is complete, we need to go to the Lambda console. So from any window where we've got the management console open, that's Kinesis from the last session, just type in Lambda and we'll go to the Lambda console. Now I have quite a few different functions here, so I'll just filter on theme park events. So you want to find the Lambda function in step 4, beginning with theme park events -publish function, which for me is just there. So select that function, and that'll open the function in the window. So what we need to do is make sure this function can be invoked by SNS. That'll be the trigger for this function. Currently there's no trigger when we deployed the function. You can actually do that in SAM templates. You can set up all your triggers programmatically, but just for the sake of the workshop, we're walking through it manually here. So this code, as we saw, creates a list of these ride wait times, and it's going to create an event for each one of those and publish that to EventBridge. And it also publishes a summary as well. So click on the Add Trigger option just here. And then in the drop down, select SNS. So I type in SNS just to match that. Now in here, we want to look for an SNS topic with ride times. It's the one we used earlier on in the workshop. And so that window now looks a lot like my screenshot. And so all I have to do now is leave enable trigger selected, step 6, and then choose add. Now once that's done, we now see the trigger is successful. And so this function is now being invoked by SNS. Great, so move on to the second section. So now we're publishing ride events to EventBridge, and so we can build applications and other things based upon those events. So we need to configure rules to do that. So in this section, what we're going to do is we're going to connect a Lambda function that publishes data to CloudWatch metrics to EventBridge. So the Lambda function itself has already been created in that SAM deployment. So we needed to build the EventBridge rule to invoke the function. So I'm going to switch to EventBridge. The first step then is to just go to EventBridge. I'll just open this up and select it there. That's step 1. And again, just double checking the region. Step 2 is to select rules and then hit create rule. You can either go to rules or you can hit create rule just here. I'll just click this one here. Now in the create rule page, these are the things we need to enter. We're going to create a rule name called theme park event metrics. The description is totally optional. It just helps identify what the rule is later on. And then with this, you define a pattern to match events on. So we're going to select event pattern. If you select schedule, that's like a cron job. That causes things to happen on a schedule. That's actually how the flow and traffic controller works, is using an EventBridge scheduled rule. But we're just going to use an event pattern here. And so now select and then select custom pattern, just as it says here, to open the event pattern panel. So an event pattern is just JSON. So we're going to copy that JSON here and then paste it into this event pattern. And then I'll choose save, step 5. Great, so our rule now looks like the screenshot shown here. We've got the name, the event pattern, it's custom, and it has this JSON here. And scrolling a little bit further down, each rule has targets. It can have up to 5 targets. We only need to do 1 here, but you scroll down to targets and then click on the target drop down and select Lambda. That's pre-selected for me here. In this function drop down, we're going to select the function name beginning with theme park events metrics function. So I'll just paste to match that, and there's my metrics function. And so again, we can see our target configuration looks like the screenshot. And in step 8, I'll click on create. So that now will filter those events based upon those rules, and will now invoke that Lambda function. So the next step is to create a dashboard. So we're going to go back to our list of services and click on CloudWatch. And again, we're just double checking this region. It's easy for the region to accidentally change, so it's worth just checking that. Now on the left-hand side, you want to choose metrics just here. And you'll see this custom namespace called Innovator Island. If you don't see it just yet, just wait a couple of minutes. There's a little bit of a delay before it'll appear when the first metrics are published. So wait until you see Innovator Island appear in that list. Actually, the tip there says that. And what we want to do is just click that custom namespace. And you'll see we've got a ride and a type that's being published. So we're going to choose that. And then we're going to choose the select all checkbox in step 3. That's just up here. So let's just check that. In step 4, now we're going to go to the Graph Options tab. That's just there. And under the widget type, choose the number radio button. So number type widget. And we want the latest value selected. That's just a little bit further down there. Leave that selected. Now in step 5, we'll click the edit pencil next to the graph title. It's just we have to make this a bit bigger for this moment. I'll put in ride times. And then just check that box there. Let's move this so we can see the instructions again. And then in the actions drop down just here, we select add to dashboard in step 6. So first we click create new and then enter innovator island for the dashboard name. Now for widget type, let's leave that as number. And then we're going to choose add to dashboard just here. You have to click the create button just there. So create there. And then we've got number, ride times, click add to dashboard. Great. So we now have, I hit save dashboard just there in step 7. So now we have a dashboard showing the wait times for all of the rides in the park. So this now can be used to share operational statistics with the park maintenance. So each one of these rides, you can see the relative wait time of each ride. Great, so that's just a dashboard that shows you the at-a-glance view of what's happening in the park. Next, we're going to use EventBridge to route maintenance events to interested targets. So now we'll move on to the next section. So this ride data system, you saw the JSON, only provides very basic information about what's happening in the ride, that maybe it's online or offline and it's got a certain wait time. Now this is now going to introduce a Lambda function that can provide more information about the outage itself. And so what happens is we're going to create a consumer for these richer events so we can route outage related information to other targets as well. So you'll see this is a brief or a small architecture diagram of what's going on here. And this is the event bus, the serverless event bus. These are different rules that we're going to be configuring, and those are different targets for each one of those rules. So let's have a quick look at the first section of creating richer outage related events. So we're going to consume that ride data that's already being published by EventBridge in the last section. I'm going to filter the outage related events. We'll then append more data about the outage and then push the information back onto the bus. So let's get started with the instructions. So first, we need to go back to our Cloud9 instance, which I've kept the tab open just here. And then we're going to deploy the Lambda function that's needed in this diagram, in this architecture diagram. So that's step 2. So to do that, we'll cd into the directory containing that function. And I'll walk you through what it does while it's deploying. So first we'll package this. So this is the sam command to package up a zip file with everything needed, and then we use the deploy command to get CloudFormation to deploy the resources. So what this is actually doing, while that's deploying, we'll take a quick look. We'll have a look in this template first of all, and it's only one function, and it's an outages function in this directory called app.js. So we'll open that up. Now this is really a simulator. What it's doing is it's randomly assigning types of problem to rides. In real life, you could have another system that was doing this. So essentially, this is a small simulator that then enriches that event. So the way it works is that the event comes in, it randomly selects a reason for an outage, and there's a bit of caching that happens. And then the most important part is this put events method, which puts the event back on the event bus. And this is something you'll see very frequently if you're using EventBridge. You'll see the envelope fields that are required in every event, and then the custom message, or the custom part of the message that is the event that will be consumed by your targets. So that deployment is now complete. So I'll just close that down. So in step 3, we go to EventBridge. So we'll switch back to any AWS window. I'll open this in a new tab. So we're going to create a new rule. So you go to the side menu and then click Create Rule. So this is the second rule we're creating. This one is called Theme Park Events Outages. So I'll just paste that in and we can use this description. And just like last time, we're going to select an event pattern. Now with EventBridge events, you can filter on AWS service events too, so that's why those options appear there. But for this application, we're using custom patterns. So we select the custom pattern option, and this is the custom pattern here in step 5. We'll copy that across to the event pattern, and then in step 6, we'll click Save. So just verify that the rule that you created looks like the screenshot, looks the same to me. And then we scroll down to step 7 where we define targets for this rule. So in the target dropdown you select Lambda, that's pre-selected for me, and in the function dropdown we're looking for this publish function. So I'll just filter because I have lots of Lambda functions, and you'll see we've got this publish function option here. That's the one we just deployed. So I'll choose add target. And so we're going to create 2 targets here, and you can have up to 5 targets per EventBridge rule. So that's the first target configured. Now we're going to configure this second target in step 8. So in this target dropdown, we're going to select CloudWatch log group. You can actually route to many different AWS services with EventBridge, but we're going to route to CloudWatch. And then we're going to give this name of Theme Park Outages. So again, this panel looks a lot like the screenshot, just making sure that the Lambda function is the same, the code will be slightly different, and then your CloudWatch log group is selected as the second target with Theme Park Outages as the name. If that is correct, you just click on Create just here. Now I'll filter on these rules. These are the rules that we've been creating. So you might remember earlier I was talking about the scheduled rule used by the flow and traffic controller. That's the ride system that creates all that real-time data from the second session. That actually is a scheduled rule that manages that. So that was set up automatically when we deployed the application. Whereas these 2 rules are ones that we've created manually in this section. Great, so what we're going to do is we're going to navigate to CloudWatch. So let's do that from up here. And I'll do this in a new tab. So we're just opening CloudWatch. And then from the left-hand side on step 11, let's click on Log Groups. That's just in the Logs menu. Now I have a lot of different logs, so what we want to do is just choose the log group, filtering for that one we created, Theme Park Outages. Actually, it's at the top just there. So what we can do is just select this. Now, it might take a minute or 2 for the first logs to appear, depending on how quickly you're moving through the steps. So if you don't see anything just yet, just give it a minute or 2 to catch up. And if you click on this log stream to open, you'll see here this is an event that's been picked up and output this way. So that proves that our rule is working and it's being invoked and it's invoking the targets. So the next step in step 2 is to create alerts for informational or warning outage events. So we're going to create 2 SNS topics to do this. And the first is for informational outages and the second is for warning outages. So let's do the first part and we'll go to the step-by-step instructions. So from the management console, we will go to SNS. So I'll just search for it here. and click on that. Then on the left-hand side, I'll select topics. So these are my theme park topics that I've been creating. And then I'll click on Create Topic. On the Create Topic page, we're going to add this name, Theme Park Events, Outages, Alerts, Info. Just make sure actually that you've got a standard type of topic created first. And then for a display name, call this Topic for Info and Warning Alerts. And then we'll choose Create Topic. So just make sure that it looks the same. This seems to be a new feature, so make sure you select Standard first. Great, so on step 4, you'll see that we've got the success message that the topic was created successfully. Now, right by itself, when it's brand new, it's not going to do anything useful because it needs subscriptions. So the first thing to do in step 4 is to create a subscription. And on this subscription page for protocol, enter email or select email and JSON. And for endpoint, enter your email address. So I'm putting in my Amazon email there. And then choose Create Subscription. Okay, that's now created successfully. Now, this won't send anything until you confirm the email address. So you want to just make sure you receive that email first and confirm it. So in step 7, now this won't do anything until you receive and confirm that email. So in step 7, you need to wait for the email to arrive and click on the confirmation link. This is just to make sure that SNS topics cannot be used to send messages in a spammy way to lots of different emails. So I've just received that email and I've clicked the link, so I've got a confirmation message there. I'll just close. So now going back to topics, and I click on subscriptions, I'll see that this now is confirmed, that my email address has been confirmed for this topic. So, okay, back to the topics list in the left side menu. You want to choose the theme park event outages alert info. That's alert info just there. So find alerts info, and then if you scroll down, you'll see I've got one subscription that has been confirmed just there. And that matches the screenshot there. So the next task is go to EventBridge. So I already have this open. If you don't have it open, just do a search in this bar for EventBridge and click on the link and it'll take you straight there. I have this open already. So I'm going to, step 9, I'm in the EventBridge console. On the side menu, we'll click on, open this to click on rules. I have that open as well. And then we'll create another rule. Now in the create rules page for step 11, we're creating a new rule pasting that in, creating a description called info, warning, and outages. We're defining an event pattern again. This is a custom event pattern. And we'll paste that in. And in step 13, click Save. If you look at this event pattern, what this is searching for is any event coming into the default event bus with a source of themepark.rides and a detail type of outage, and then anywhere where the type of outage is an informational or a warning. So it'll ignore emergency outages, but just those first two. Next, you scroll down to the targets, and we'll click on the targets in the drop-down, and we want to look for SNS as a target. And so we want to match the topic to theme park events outages alerts-info. So that's my topic just there. And that matches the targets list there. And then choose create. So the next time there's an outage of an informational or warning state, I'll receive an email. Now that's not going to happen instantly, so I'll move on to the next section, and at the end we'll review my email to see if we've had one of those events happen. So the next part of this is creating alerts for emergency outages. So this will only work if you're in a region where SNS supports SMS messaging. So if you're not, just look through what I'm doing here. And if you're outside of the United States, just ignore this as well. But for now, just look through how I connect up an SNS topic. So this is going to consume enriched events from the default event bus routed to these targets, and it's looking for these emergency alerts. So we've covered the informational ones, now we're looking at emergency alerts. SMS messages do come with a charge, at least in the US, so be careful with this because you will incur charges on your phone bill potentially. So let's look at the step-by-step instructions. So to send SMS messages, we use SNS. So I go back to SNS. I'll just search for it in the menu, and that takes me to the SNS console. And in step 2, we'll click on the topics menu on the left, and then choose create topic, and then click standard. We're going to enter another name. This is similar to the last one. We've changed the name, put emergency at the end for this one. And then under display name, we'll give it a useful display name. That again looks like this screenshot. So now we'll click on create topic. So that gives you this confirmation that the topic has been successfully created as shown here. Now on the create subscription page, we need to create a subscription here. So I'll just click on that. Last time we entered email JSON as a protocol. This time we're going to enter SMS. I'm going to enter a cell phone number here. And then click on create subscription at the bottom. So now what we can do is go to EventBridge, and I just enter this in here, and then I'll open this in a new tab. And so on step 8, we go to this side menu for rules and choose create rule once more. And we're back on this create rule page that we've seen a couple of times now. So this rule I'll create called outage event alerts emergency. I'll call it emergency outages just so we can easily find the rule. We're defining a pattern, a custom pattern just like before. And you'll notice this rule is very similar to the last one. But the big difference is the detail type is emergency instead of informational. So otherwise it's looking at the same source and the same detail. So using these patterns, you can look at nested attributes in incoming events, and that's how you would do this. You can also use additional filters to search for ranges of values as well. So then in step 13, we click on save. And we move on to step 14, where we go down to the targets panel. Remember, every rule must have a target, otherwise the event is not going to be routed anywhere. I'll click on SNS or find SNS in this drop down. And we're looking for this emergency one. So that's the one we created before, the info target, which is routed to email. And then we're selecting this one that will route to SMS. Then once that's done, just click on create. And now we'll start to receive SMS messages when emergency happens. So I have my phone available here, and hopefully in the next few minutes, one of the rides breaks down and we have an emergency so we can show this. Now if we don't get an emergency, what we can do is create a test event that will cause all these things to trigger. So we can actually generate a test event using the CLI fairly easily. So to do this, what we're going to do is go back to the Cloud9 instance that we have. So I've got this already open. If you don't have it open, just go back to a menu, up here, and then type in Cloud9 and you'll find your instance there. So in step 2 here, we'll change the directory into, I'll just clear there, and then we're going to put a test event on the EventBridge default event bus. So if we look in that directory under 6 EventBridge 2 maintenance test event, what you'll see is there's some JSON here that will simulate an outage. This is an emergency, and you'll see that that's in this stringified JSON just there. So when I inject this event into the bus, that will trigger the emergency. So to do that in step 3, we just run this command. This is using the AWS CLI, so we're using the put events method, and the event entries flag can then take this test event as a file. So I'll get my phone ready to receive this. Okay, so that's now been put on the bus, no failed entries there, and that's now being routed through EventBridge to SNS. I've just felt my phone vibrate, and there we have a message that's arrived indicating there's an emergency in the park. And before we exit, let's just see if we've had any type of emails. And what I'm seeing, yep, I've seen an email indicating an informational alert too. So that was the first type of alert we set up as well. So we've seen both types of alerts for both email and for SMS. So that shows you how you can route events and extend your application without changing the original code of the first round of application we built in sessions 2 and 3. So congratulations, you've made it through to the end of Innovator Island. Thanks very much for joining me throughout this series. I hope you learned quite a lot and found some useful tips for building your own real-time applications using serverless services. So the most important thing to do here at this point is to clean up any resources. So in the instructions, you'll see there is an option here that says cleanup. So follow the steps there, and it'll walk through removing all of the resources in your account so you don't incur any additional charges by accident. So if you enjoyed learning how to build a serverless web application, I've published a series on an application called Ask Around Me that demonstrates how to use geolocation and geohashing and authentication, and also design an architecture for scaling to meet heavy load. And you can reach that by going to this link, bit.ly/askaroundme. And there's a full GitHub repo and a series of 3 articles that explain the design. Also, for more information about how to learn developing serverless applications, go to serverlessland.com, where we collect a range of blogs, videos, and other resources that can show you how to build using serverless services on AWS. In the meantime, thank you for coming to my theme park. I hope you found this very useful and it gave you some tools and ideas for designing your own scalable real-time serverless applications. Please complete any surveys you see as part of this session. And if you like this session, please give us feedback so we can develop more modules and more workshops for you. Also, please contact me anytime with your questions or ideas, and I'll do my very best to help. It's been an absolute pleasure having you for a few hours going through Innovator Island. Thanks very much for your time and attention, and I'll see you again soon.